Robin wrote a thing and he sent it to me, I think just yesterday. It's funny. It was just kind of his read, but he didn't want me to share it publicly. I'll just share it in one part. It was over a page or two. It was about his kind of perspective of the Cullen collection and this work that I've been engaged in the last couple of years. I don't know if you'll want to say anything. Oh, you were going to interview me, right, about my literary influences. And at the end of it, he said, when he first told, I don't know if he was embellishing this, when he first told me about this, I thought my dad was crazy. At his age, to be tackling such a big problem.
And he added, and he was careful not to volunteer to help.
He must have talked to Joseph.
Yeah, I mean, when I write, and if I get 2 hours of writing done in a day, I'm good. And he was like getting up at 3 and putting in 14-hour days. I was like, man, this is crazy. It's 6 million words, checking 500,000 commas. And, oh, by the way, I'm also going to do a new 600-page biography of MacDonald. I was like, this is crazy. But I guess he pulled it off. Right. Yeah, I can't remember when I first heard of George McDonald, but I remember there was a moment when I first realized my dad was an author. So I used to go and in the bookstore, they had a children's section, and they had a nice couch. I'm sure Gregory remembers that. I would just spend hours in the children's section and reading on the couch. And one day I got up to stretch, I wandered out of that section and came across a big shelf of my dad's books, and I was like, whoa, that's my dad's name. I didn't know he had books. And I was like, I actually literally took one and went and showed one of the employees, look, that's my dad's name, isn't that cool? And they couldn't quite appreciate my point, but they did. Like that was the moment I realized that he wrote books. And then as I grew older, I came to have an appreciation of the George McDonald stories, and I wanted to get them on audiobook so I can listen to them when I clean my room. And so I tracked down, I like to research even back then, so I tracked down this obscure organization that produced cassette tapes for blind people. And I wrote to the person that ran it and said, hey, I'm not blind, but my dad edited these books, so can I borrow some of the tapes? And so I would listen to the books while I cleaned my room. And I kind of took MacDonald for granted as well, but as I grew older, I saw all the people who were helped by them. People would come to Eureka, and even more people would write letters, and many of the letters our parents would read out during meal times. People sharing how his spiritual vision had transformed their lives and how their families had been helped by MacDonald. And so it really touched me how many people have been impacted by his spiritual vision. And that's why we're here, because all of us have been touched in some way by MacDonald. To enjoy them initially just as great stories, especially the Curdy books are great ones to start with. Children, Princess and Goblin, Princess and Curdy, some of his shorter fantasies, and like what's that one called where the princess doesn't have any gravity and she keeps going up? Yeah, that's My Princess. And because if you just my introduction to MacDonald was just having my parents read them out loud. My mother read the Curdy books, Dad read the novels, and they're just fun stories. And I think that's something that all children can identify with. But I need a small business loan. The frog's name was Kermit Jagger, and the teller eyes him suspiciously. Frog sees that her name is Whack, Mrs. Whack. And she says, well, it's a bit strange. Do you have any credit history? Do you have any paperwork? And he said, I'm a frog. Of course I don't. My father is a world famous music celebrity. He's Mick Jagger. And surely that's got to count for something. And she said, well, and he said, can I ask your first name? And she says, it's Patty. He says, well, Patty, how about giving me a loan? She says, well, I'm just not sure about it. And he said, well, she said, do you have any collateral? Do you have anything you can use as collateral? I said, no, but my father's Mick Jagger, and I actually, here. And he pulls out a crystal elephant and hands it to her and says, this can be collateral. Just go ask your manager about it. And so Mrs. Wack takes the crystal elephant and she goes to her manager and says, hey, this is going to sound funny, but there's this frog here who wants a loan. And he says his father is Mick Jagger, and he's giving me this crystal elephant. I don't even know what it is, she said. And the manager looks at it and he says, it's a knick-knack, paddywhack, give the frog a loan. This old man's a rolling stone. So, well,
Way to remember the punchline. That was
so my old man isn't a rolling stone, but we appreciate his work, and we're
Speak for yourself. I mean, yes.
we're here to talk about MacDonald and his use of imagination.
This gentleman has kindly allowed me to quote from him. His book, Saints and Scoundrels, copy of it's over there. This is some messaging that he and I did last week or 2 or 3. And then I made some photocopies of the actual lineage in his book. It's amazing, and just we'll see what you guys think. It's pretty cool stuff. For MacDonald, there is a divine splendor that lies concealed in the stuff of ordinary life, and even the mundane and commonplace participate in God's grace. The sacramental vision of the world, a world where everything is bathed in divine splendor, led Chesterton to refer to him as St. Francis of Aberdeen. MacDonald, like St. Francis, was gifted with the ability to see the same sort of halo around every flower and bird. MacDonald thought of his novels as an extension of his failed pulpit ministry. As such, they convey to us the righteousness, that righteousness is attractive. While MacDonald's characters constantly remind us that nothing is as important as doing our duty in the next 5 minutes, his characters also show us there is nothing quite as exciting. The ability to make goodness attractive is also a dominant feature of MacDonald's fantastical works. While his fairy tales take us into the dream worlds full of strange creatures, fantastic occurrences, they are not escapist, for they can help us view the real world and our role in it with great clarity, insight, and wonder. Not only can fairy tales be enjoyed because they are mortal, Chesterton once noted, but mortality can be enjoyed because it puts us in fairyland, in a world at once full of wonder and war. This is exactly what MacDonald's stories do for us. After accompanying Mr. Vane through the mysterious landscape of Lilith, following Diamond's travels with Lady Northwind, and at the back of the Northwind, or journeying with Curdie to Gwentystorm and the Princess and the Curdie, we begin to see the mystery and enchantment of which the real world has been infused. We begin to feel that the world of fairy, as MacDonald liked to spell it, has invaded, F-A-E-R-I-E, has invaded the world of men, or as Chesterton put it when writing about MacDonald, that the fairy tale was inside the ordinary story and not the outside. His mythic vision, encapsulated in his fantastical works, invites us to see the world not primarily as facts, but as a wonderful story in which we are participants. Isn't this guy good?
Yes, he is.
My God.
Wow.
I'm not done. This is what C.S. Lewis discovered in MacDonald, and why it helped to nudge him away from the materialism of his atheistic worldview. Quote, "The quality which has enchanted me in his imaginative works," Lewis wrote in his anthology of the MacDonald works, "turns out to be that quality of the real universe, the divine, the magical, the terrifying, the ecstatic world in which we all live," quote unquote. MacDonald himself articulated something like this in the essay, A Sketch of Individual Development, in his book, Edition of Works, 1882. Here he suggests that our world is every bit as magical, every bit as wonderful, and every bit as enchanted as the world of fairyland. In the same work, he goes on to write movingly about what happens when the world begins to come alive around a person. He begins to feel that the stars are strange, the moon is sad, the sunrise is mighty. He will lie on the sunny bank and gaze into the blue heaven until his soul seems to float abroad and mingle with the infinite made visible. With the boundless condensed into color and shape, the rush of the water through the still twilight under the faint gleam of the exhausted west makes in his ears a melody he is almost aware that he cannot understand. And that's grandfather saying this. That's why we're here. Here MacDonald is in common ground with 19th century romantics like Wordsworth, Tennyson, who also saw the world as pervaded with spirituality. Yet MacDonald goes one step further. He showed that it is the goodness which infuses our world with meaningful and makes it beautiful, in contrast both to the prosaic moralism of his grandmother, which sucked all the beauty out of goodness, as well as the subjective sentimentalism of the Romantic movement, which untethered beauty from its foundation in objective goodness. MacDonald showed that beauty and objective goodness cannot be separated. It is precisely this that makes his work so appealing. I should have been shocked in my teens, wrote C.S. Lewis, if anyone had told me then that what I learned to love in Phantastes was goodness. But now I know that there is no deception. The deception is the other way around. It is that prosaic moralism which confines goodness to the region of law and duty, which never lets us feel in our face the sweet air blowing from the land of righteousness, and never reveals that elusive form which, if once seems must inevitably be desired, but with all sensuous desire. You're good, dude.
Yeah, so if I could just...
You got the floor.
I see MacDonald as being a teacher in a sort of classical sense, because in the classical world, they believed that you cannot pursue the good unless you see it as beautiful, and this comes out in Plato. So in Plato, the goal of a teacher is not just to teach somebody what's true and not merely to help them to follow what's good, but for them to see the true and the good as being beautiful. So it was a holistic idea of education where you're trying to implant in the students an attraction to the good and beautiful, to help them to see it as lovely. And I see MacDonald as being a teacher in this classical sense, because through his imaginative works, he renders goodness to be lovely. He shows us that there's nothing quite so exciting and adventurous as following Jesus and doing your duty in the next 5 minutes. And so he breaks down this antithesis we often have. Yeah, I need to be good, I need to do my duty, but that's disconnected with fully flourishing as a human being. And it's like, we let the devil have all the bright colors. That's what Chesterton said. He wouldn't let the devil have all the bright colors. He showed that good Christianity competed with the vividness and beauty of the passions. This is what Chesterton was so inspiring for Chesterton, MacDonald's spiritual vision. He was able to bring together goodness, truth, and beauty.
Is this being recorded?
Yeah.
It needs to be. Again, quoting from my friend from the North Wind Annual 2003, this had created a dichotomy in MacDonald's mind between beauty and faith, religion and loveliness. As MacDonald continued to read the Bible, especially the Gospels, he came to realize that these two sides of him were not in competition. God is the God of the beautiful, religion the love of the beautiful, and heaven the home of the beautiful.
Yeah.
Is that MacDonald?
That's
or me?
you.
That's me.
Can I have your autograph? Sheesh.
Dave, read that again.
Yeah.
God is the God of the beautiful, religion the love of the beautiful, and heaven the home of the beautiful. Amazing. Gradually, MacDonald had come to appreciate that his imagination and love of beauty were not separate to his relationship with Christ, but integrally connected to it. I could go on, and I just might. I've got a lot of red in here, and everything's underlined. MacDonald showed that beauty and objective goodness cannot be separated. Ultimately, this was because of Christ, in whose person goodness, truth, and beauty existed in perfect unity. The interconnectedness between the trinity of goodness, truth, and beauty meant that to separate any of these three was to do violence to the others.
Wow.
Well, why not? In this sense of beauty intimately connected with both truth and goodness that raises MacDonald's novels about what we would otherwise be tedious Victorian moralism. It is true that because MacDonald thought of his novels as an extension of his failed pulpit, that they often suffer from being heavy and didactic. However, I suggest that their true value lies not in their literary quality, but in the way that they convey to us that righteousness is attractive, that the Christian faith is not merely worthy of assent, but of love. In this way, the subject to the novels, the subtext to the novels constantly reminds what I'm calling the anthropology of love. That's what you labeled the article's name to.
Yeah.
Just all over the place.
We've got some copies of it over on the table.
Oh my gosh, double that copy up, whoever gets it.
The display copies.
Oh.
Thanks for clearing.
Hidden in the grass to the camera. That was the world's first remote control camera. And he invented it. Yeah.
He invented it.
He invented it. Yes.
Lewis Carroll.
Yes. Lewis Carroll. Yes. He and grandfather met in 1859 in the doctor's office. They both had a stuttering disorder. George not so much. Charles, yes. And since Charles lectured in mathematics at Oxford, he tried to seek out a solution. The doctors introduced them. They became best buddies. And then he became their family photographer for several years. And from 1862 to 63, he photographed the entire family and all the kids up to that point individually. Charles gave George the manuscript to Alice. George brought it home, read it, thought it was pretty cool. He gave it to Louisa, said read it, she thought it was pretty cool. He read it to the kids, they thought it was pretty cool. As such, they convinced Charles to publish Alice in Wonderland. It was initially called Alice's Adventures Underground. George at that time, his publisher was Macmillan. The only time that Macmillan published him that I'm aware of, England's and Tiffany. And so Charles took it to Macmillan, chose John Tenniel as the illustrator. magic happened. George, at the same time, had written The Light Princess. Couldn't find a publisher for it. This is in '62 also. He read it to his college students that he was tutoring, and they loved it. They said, publish it. And Hurst and Blackett wouldn't do it, and Macmillan wouldn't do it. And so he held on to it till 1864. The novel Adela Cathcart is a collection of his short stories that's based on bringing a young lady out of mental depression. And that was the first appearance of The Light Princess, and it was published by Hurst and Blackett, which was one of his publishers that published several of his novels. Charles photographed from 1856 to 1880, 24 years. He was a photographer, one of Victorian's finest. Around the 1880 year, the technical aspects of photography changed, the logistics, the chemicals, and Charles didn't pursue it from then after. The last correspondence that Charles had with the family from 1859, their last correspondence was 1883. The MacDonalds were in Italy, and it was through letter correspondence. Charles died in 1895, and of course, grandfather died in 1905.